Hi there. Today is the 22nd of August, 2020, and I'm Paul Glumaz, 46-year veteran political organizer with the political movement of Lyndon LaRouche, and this is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents. So I'm going to go into something very hard to describe, but very profound. And that is the fact that the U.S. population, not all of it, but a large part of it, it has a quality about them that exists nowhere else in the world. It's a quality of empowerment, self-empowerment, and it's usually a quality which does not express itself except in times of crisis, and it's a quality of a quality of the soul which has not been repressed as it has in most other societies and other cultures. So I'm going to go into this. Now, many people following the Democratic National Convention are scratching their head, what is this? This does not seem like a normal convention. And you have violence on the streets, you have this message of hate, and you have this total manipulation of emotions, and most of all, there's one issue. There's only one issue that is allowed to be discussed, and that issue is the problem, the one problem, and that issue is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the problem. And were the Biden, whatever it is, were to be elected or insurrected or vote frauded into the presidency, however you want to call it, this is not a normal election. They intend to impose on the population the most brutal, bone-crushing measures. They intend to use a vast intelligence surveillance state. They intend to use elements like Antifa to terrorize and threaten anybody that stands up. They intend to have a police state like none, in a modern sense, like none other has ever existed. And it'll be totally coordinated with the media, with the intelligence services, with the surveillance state, with the contractors, with the military-industrial complex, and with the banks. And they will impose green policy. The new economic system will be a environmental economic system, which means hell, which means mass death on a global scale. That's their intention behind the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is not a political party anymore. It ceased being a political party after 8 years of Obama. It was somewhat of a political party when Obama came in, but he crushed it. He crushed everything. The intelligence, the surveillance, the behavioral economists, this whole thing, they took over the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is nothing now but an extension of a vast intelligence, weaponized intelligence machinery. It's not a party. It doesn't exist as a party, okay? There is no give. You know, there is no dissension. You follow, everybody does what they're told. It's not a party. There were factions. They've left. And there's this endless manipulation of people emotionally and what have you. Now, in the convention, Obama went so far as to say that Trump killed 170,000 people because of his response to the COVID virus. And as I was saying, the message is that Donald Trump is the problem. And in a sense, it is the correct message. Because the internet and this election and insurrection and possible military coup, color revolution, is not to determine just who will be the president, or for that matter, simply issues or policies. Rather, it is to crush and subdue once and for all the U.S. population under this kind of police state surveillance system. In other words, this election is not being run to elect the president. It's being run to crush the American people. And more so, the American people have gone over to Donald Trump as a last representation of any kind of future hopes. And the idea is to crush the American people once and for all, and turn everybody into a subject or hopeless. Out of hopelessness, they do nothing. They give up. They just live. Live like an animal, maybe get rich, but give up any idea that there's a future, or that you as a citizen have any say in anything. So what is it that they're trying to crush? Well, it's something that's inherent in historically in the U.S. population, that when you reach a moment like this, something happens. People start to say, well, we got to do something. People all over the country start to say, well, we got to do something. Our politicians don't mean anything to us anymore. The Republican Party, the Democratic Party, the citizens have to become active. And actually, that's what's been going on. And what all Trump is representing is that. And you're seeing an active involvement of citizens like you have never seen before around this. And these are not politicians, and they may be off on some crazy issue, but they're not politicians. These are people that are genuinely becoming activated to save the republic. And so Trump is the problem because he's managed to optimistically influence them into believing that America could be revived. America as a nation could be revived, not as a world globalist entity, but as a nation could be revived. And that is not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to have any kind of hope of that kind of thing happening. That you could actually rebuild a nation. You could actually restore a high living standard to people. You could actually go into space. You could actually go forward. This is not allowed. This is not allowed to be allowed. And Trump came along and said, "Make America great again." And this is what's being triggered. So now I want to go into greater depth on this, in terms of what this special quality is, and I will take a look at it from a standpoint of an observer from Europe. And this observer from Europe is a very well-known person who came to the United States on a tour on behalf of the French government to examine penitentiaries. His name is Alexis de Tocqueville. And he spent 9 months touring the U.S. And in 1935, he published his book on in French on the American democracy. And so the America that he was traveling in was 30 years before the Civil War. It was in the height of the beginning of Jacksonian democracy. And his observations are very interesting. And I'll go through some of them, okay? I'll read you from Wikipedia on it, okay? What he says is that the U.S. was a society where hard work and money making was the dominant ethic, where the common man enjoyed a level of dignity which was unprecedented, where commoners never deferred to elites, where crass individualism and market capitalism had taken root in extraordinary degree. Among democratic people, okay, he said among democratic people, where there is no hereditary wealth, every man works to earn a living, labor is held in honor. The prejudice is not against labor, but for labor. Ordinary Americans enjoy too much power and claimed too great a voice in the public sphere. To defer to intellectuals, this culture promoted a relatively pronounced equality. In other words, it was mediocrity dominated in the sense that the average person had a voice, and that was the common denominator, and mediocrity predominated. And those with the most education and intelligence were left with two choices: join limited cultural circles, intellectual circles, to explore weighty and complex problems facing society, or they could use their superior talents to amass vast fortunes in the private sector. He did not know of any country where there was less independence of mind and true freedom of discussion than in America. In other words, mediocrity dominates. Okay, the majority has enclosed thought with a formidable fence. A writer is free inside that area, but woe to the man who goes beyond it. Not that he stands in fear of an inquisition, but he must face all kinds of unpleasantness and everyday persecution. A career in politics is close to him, for he has offended the only power which holds the keys: mediocrity, the general majority. And then here comes the kicker. Okay, what he's saying is that while this is the case, this individual person does not feel helpless. This is very important. The very fact that they feel empowered in their mediocrity nonetheless doesn't make them feel helpless. And that's the whole point. That when there is a crisis, there is a sense that something can be done, and that it has to be done by them. And this is very important, because this is a quality that doesn't exist in other places. And that's what you're starting to see happen in the United States. These people are coming forward, and they are being rallied by a president who is reflecting that perspective of a future, of a future, and he's tapping into that quality in people, which is not the same. It's mediocre, but it's not the same in a time of crisis, and that's a quality embedded in the soul that has a freedom to it that you don't see anywhere else. And that is what this presidential campaign is determined to stamp out and crush, that quality. Just break the people once and for all. You know, with all this stuff that's going on, break them. You know, break them. And then maybe trigger a civil war. I don't know. But break this sense of power. Well, they're not going to be able to do that. It might end up in a civil war. But the point is, this is where the election is going. And because of that, this election has profound significance internationally. Because if the United States if we secure a second term for Donald Trump, then this power within the population will be reflected in the president. And that's the end of the British Empire. That's the end of the empire once and for all. Because that is where Trump's going to go. Because in order to restore the United States, he has to break with the British Empire. In order to have a future for the United States, he's got to end the endless wars. In order to have a future for the United States, he has to prevent the Green New Deal. He has to go against the Green New Deal. He has to go for the space program. He has to go for science and technology. And he's showing many signs and indications of this. And as we come out of the Democratic Convention, and in a few days we'll see the Republican Convention, Donald Trump is potentially going to have a monopoly on being able to have a dialogue with the population on what kind of future that is going to be represented. No future was presented of any kind at the Democratic Convention. It was just simply manipulation on a grand scale. But now, in the week ahead, Donald Trump has the capability in addressing through the convention and through his person a shaping of a vision of a future, not just attacking the Democrats. They don't really need attacking as much as you need to get the population to see where you're going to take them and why it's important that they go there. And so that's the essence of this situation. The essence of this situation is that there is this quality in the American, which is now coming out in the revolutionary way, as it did going into the Civil War, as it did going into the Depression and World War II. We had a similar population that was similarly degenerate, maybe not as degenerate as now, but it had all these qualities of mediocrity and didn't care about the world, didn't care about anything. I'm only caring about myself. You know, all I want to do is get rich and so forth and so on. And then something changes. Things get to a point where something has to be done, and then that quality in the American psyche is triggered, and that's where we are now, and that's what Trump has tapped into, which allowed for him to win the 2016 election. And it's this potential that has always existed in the U.S. population, which is the basis for Lyndon LaRouche representing the United States to the world in all the discussions that he had during the period of his lifetime with leaders and networks around the world. He represented that potential coming out of the United States, and that potential is now coming into place. That potential is now being activated, or began to be activated, and is now potentially at a point of taking power in the United States. And that's when the British Empire ends, and that's where we're going. And in understanding that is to understand why this is not a regular election. It's not going to end with the voting. It'll probably be contested. It'll probably go into January. It'll probably go in beyond January. You will not know who will be the president until late in January, if then. This is going to be an incredible situation. You can tell right now there's a huge battle around the postal thing. It's a total fraud. The Postal Service the budget cuts began under Obama. They tried to privatize it and all of that. And they're making a big deal of the postal thing because they don't want to go out. They want to be able to have this write-in ballot. I mean, they want to be able to have the mail-in ballot when there's most states that are being have to do it don't have not done it. I mean, it'll be a total fiasco. You will not know what the election. It'll be a total fiasco, and that's why. So there is a battle occurring on that level. So that's just a prelude for the kind of war, and then you have the stuff in the streets, the violence in the streets, and that is designed to create the kind of capability that were Biden and company to come in, then they could direct these auxiliaries of theirs to target individuals who were not going along, okay, to terrorize the population. They want to use, after they take over, they want to use the Antifa apparatus to essentially terrorize populations into submission, just like they did with just like the way Hitler did with the brown shirts. That's what they intend to do. It's not a question of numbers as much in our day, because you have the internet. You can follow people, you can threaten them, at home, you can threaten their children, you can create that kind of environment where you're not going to be protected. You're on your own. You have no way of representing anything You just have to survive. You have to knuckle under and survive, and that's your life, you know. Unless, and then if you and so forth. And so this is what this Antifa thing is. It's creating a brown shirt capability that can be deployed against the population and against people that are speaking out, or who have the wrong ideas, who have the wrong sense. It's to get them in line. It's get them to go Heil, to, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, to say the politically correct thing. And this is what it's all about. And it's all being synchronized and coordinated through private contractors connected to the intelligence community. And the media is in sync with the message, that's in sync with their campaigns, which is sync with what they're doing on the streets, and so forth and so on. This is technically called by the CIA a color revolution. And that's the purpose of that color revolution, is to crush the spirit, this quality in the American psyche. And once they do that, then it's all over. And that's where we are. So we are determined that that's not going to happen. And like I said, Trump has the opportunity to address the future and attack this thing from the standpoint that they have no future. And what he's representing is a future. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in a week.